They called her perfect. The smile that never cracked. The beauty that never faded. The jewel of a dynasty that could not be touched. But what the world never saw was the cage. Golden, yes, but still a cage. And behind those polished gates, behind those glittering gowns and flawless photos, lived a young woman who was slowly suffocating. This is the story of how a politician's daughter, born into unimaginable privilege, dared to chase freedom, and found herself at the center of a scandal that shook an entire empire. But to understand how it all unraveled, we must begin at the very beginning, inside the glittering cage. She entered the world not just as a child, but as a symbol. The hospital room wasn't filled only with doctors and nurses. It was guarded by men in dark suits, whispering into walkie-talkies. Journalists camped outside, desperate for a first glimpse. Her birth wasn't private, it was political. Her father was already a rising star in Nigerian politics at the time. Charismatic, ruthless, and cunning, he had clawed his way from obscurity to become one of the most powerful men in the country. And when his first daughter was born, he announced it like a triumph. She was not just his child, she was the future of his legacy. From the moment she could walk, cameras followed her. Every birthday was a headline. Every appearance, a carefully curated image of elegance, power, and control. She wasn't simply growing up, she was performing a role. Her home was no ordinary home. It was a fortress. Tall gates wrapped around sprawling mansions, where convoys of black SUVs came and went. Soldiers patrolled the grounds. Inside, marble floors gleamed under golden chandeliers, and imported paintings lined the walls. To outsiders, it was paradise. But to her, it was a prison. Every morning, she woke not to the sound of birds, but to the shuffle of guards stationed outside her bedroom door. Every move she made was watched, timed, and approved. Tutors, carefully selected by her father, came to her rather than letting her attend a normal school. Friends were screened. Conversations were monitored. Even laughter sometimes felt scripted. When she was eventually sent abroad for her education, it wasn't freedom she found. It was surveillance. Her father's money reached across oceans. Bodyguards trailed her every step. Reports were sent back home. She was taught to dress a certain way, speak a certain way, and even think a certain way. She had everything money could buy, except choice. The newspapers adored her. The jewel of the nation, one headline called her. Fashion magazines praised her beauty, her grace, her style. At political events, she was the perfect daughter, standing silently by her father's side, shaking hands when told, smiling when required. To the world, she seemed untouchable. Every photograph of her glowed with perfection: silk gowns, designer shoes, diamond earrings that sparkled under flashing cameras. Young girls envied her life. Mothers pointed at her picture and said, "Why can't you be more like her?" But behind those flawless photos, she felt invisible. Nobody saw the girl inside the gown, the girl who longed to walk barefoot through crowded Lagos streets, to eat roasted corn by the roadside, to laugh freely without guards whispering into earpieces. Nobody saw the loneliness that came with perfection. She learned to smile on command. But she also learned to hide small rebellions inside that smile. When her father ordered her to study law, she secretly filled her notebooks with poetry. When her mother dressed her in elaborate outfits for public appearances, she snuck away to wear jeans and t-shirts in her room. At night, she sat by her window, looking past the tall fences into the world outside. She watched street vendors hustling, young couples walking hand in hand, children chasing footballs through dusty fields. That world seemed messy, noisy, unpredictable. But to her, it was beautiful, because it was free. She wanted that chaos. She wanted that noise. She wanted to feel something real. Her father's empire wasn't just political. It was personal. His rivals feared him. His allies depended on him. His name was both a shield and a weapon. And she, his daughter, was the soft spot in his armor. He guarded her fiercely, not out of love alone, but out of calculation. He knew her image made him look powerful. A flawless daughter meant a flawless leader. Any scandal around her would be scandal around him. So, she was never allowed to stumble. Never allowed to fail. Never allowed to be human. Her life was a performance staged for millions, but it was killing her slowly. It was at a charity gala, held in the glass towers of Victoria Island, that she first felt something stir inside her. She was barely 21, standing in a glittering hall filled with Lagos elites, when she noticed him. Not one of her father's allies. Not one of the usual sycophants who bowed before her family's name. He was different. His smile wasn't polished, it was real. His eyes didn't dart toward her father, they lingered on her. And for the first time in her life, someone was looking at her, not the daughter of a politician, not the jewel of a dynasty, not the flawless image in a photograph, but her. She felt her heart race. Her palms sweat. It was a feeling she had never been allowed to explore. She didn't know then how dangerous that moment would be. She didn't know that the man who made her heart skip would one day tear open the cage she lived in. But for now, it was just a spark, a secret she carried in silence. Her father's career climbed higher. With each election, each deal, each victory, the walls around her grew taller. By the time she returned from her studies abroad, she was expected to step fully into her role as the perfect daughter. She attended ribbon cuttings, charity drives, and exclusive dinners. Cameras flashed endlessly, but no matter how bright the lights were, she felt the darkness inside growing. She smiled for the world, but at night she cried into her pillow. She had everything, yet nothing that belonged truly to her. Every time she looked in the mirror, she asked the same question, "Who am I, if not my father's daughter?" The answer never came. And so, her story begins, not with scandal, not with betrayal, but with suffocation. A young woman trapped in a palace of marble and gold, desperate for air, desperate for something real. She had no idea that her search for freedom would ignite a fire powerful enough to burn her father's empire to the ground. If you've been drawn into her world, the glittering cage where power hides pain, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the next part, the cage begins to crack, and what slips through will change everything. Every cage has a weakness. Every wall has a crack. And for her, the crack came in the form of a man she was never supposed to love. The son of her father's fiercest rival. The forbidden flame that promised freedom, even as it threatened destruction. This is how the scandal began. It was another gala. She had attended dozens before, rooms filled with men in expensive suits, women in dazzling gowns, journalists scribbling every detail, and cameras flashing endlessly. These events weren't about charity or progress. They were showcases of power. Her father loved them. She hated them. But on this particular evening, something shifted. She had wandered away from the crowd, pretending to admire the glittering chandeliers, when a voice spoke behind her. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else." She turned. He was tall, with an ease about him that contrasted sharply with the rigid, polished masks around her. His suit was sharp, but his smile was unguarded, honest, almost rebellious. She laughed before she could stop herself. "Is it that obvious?" "Yes," he said, grinning. "You're drowning in a sea of phonies, and you don't even try to hide it." For the first time, someone wasn't rehearsed around her. Someone wasn't bowing to her father's name. Someone was seeing her. Later, she would discover who he was. His father, the sworn rival of her own. A man her father had spent years trying to destroy in elections, in policies, in public opinion. It should have ended there. She should have walked away, erased the conversation from her mind, buried the feeling in silence. But she couldn't. Because that night, when she returned home to her marble palace, it wasn't the chandeliers she remembered. It was his words. His smile. The way, for just a moment, she had felt human. It began innocently. A chance meeting at another event. A polite conversation at a political summit. A fleeting smile when their eyes met across a crowded room. But soon it grew bolder. Text messages that lit up her phone in the dead of night. Secret calls that lasted until dawn. Plans whispered between bodyguards and watchful aides. Their first true meeting happened in a quiet cafe, far from the lights of Victoria Island, disguised as strangers. She wore a headscarf and oversized glasses. He kept his cap low over his face. It should have felt dangerous. Instead, it felt alive. With him, there were no rules. No rehearsed smiles. No cameras. Just two young people talking, laughing, sharing dreams they had never dared voice aloud. For the first time, she tasted freedom, and it was intoxicating. But freedom always comes at a price. Every time she slipped away, she risked everything. Her father's trust. Her family's honor. Her reputation, polished to perfection over decades. If the press ever found out, it would not just be a love story, it would be a weapon. And in politics, weapons were deadly. Yet, the more dangerous it became, the deeper she fell. His hands, his voice, his presence, all of it pulled her further from the cage her father built. He was the rebellion she had always craved. And in her heart, she knew the truth. This wasn't just love. This was war. Her father noticed the changes first. She smiled more. She asked fewer questions about his policies, more about ordinary life. She excused herself from events with unusual frequency. "Who is he?" her mother asked one evening, narrowing her eyes. "No one," she lied, her heart pounding. But in a family like hers, secrets were impossible to keep. The household was a network of guards, aides, and spies. Every move was reported. Every phone call logged. Every step traced. And still, she continued. She risked everything for stolen hours in hidden corners of Lagos. Because those hours were hers. Hers alone. Their love was not built on wealth or power. It was built on rebellion. They shared dreams of a world beyond politics, beyond dynasties, beyond cages. He took her to places her father would never allow, markets buzzing with laughter, beaches where children played barefoot, quiet neighborhoods where lovers walked without fear of cameras. She ate roasted corn by the roadside for the first time in her life. She rode on a motorcycle, clinging to him as the wind rushed against her face. She laughed until tears filled her eyes, realizing how much she had missed the taste of chaos, the sound of freedom. In those moments, she wasn't the politician's daughter. She was just a girl in love. But storms always gather quietly before they strike. Her father's rivals whispered. His allies grew suspicious. Rumors began to circulate in hushed voices across the political circles of Abuja and Lagos. "Have you heard? They say the daughter is involved with." One night her father summoned her. His eyes, sharp and unforgiving, searched hers. "Is there something I should know?" he asked. Her throat tightened. She forced a smile. "No, Baba." But he didn't believe her. He never did. The more the danger grew, the harder it became to stop. She told herself she would end it, that she would choose duty over desire. But every time she saw him, every time he touched her hand, every time he whispered her name, she broke her own promises. Because love, once ignited, is not easily extinguished. And she knew, deep down, that it was only a matter of time before the world found out. Every cage has a weakness. Hers was love. Every empire has a crack. Hers had just been struck. What she didn't know was that the photograph already existed. The photograph that would shatter everything. It takes years to build an empire. But sometimes, all it takes to destroy one is a single photograph. For the politician's daughter, the walls of her glittering cage had already begun to crack. But what she didn't know was that someone, somewhere, was watching, waiting, capturing every stolen glance, every dangerous touch, every secret meeting. And when the photograph was released, her private rebellion became a public scandal that threatened to burn everything her father had ever built. It was an ordinary night. She thought she was safe. Hidden in the dim shadows of a quiet restaurant, sitting across from the only man who made her feel free. He reached across the table, fingers brushing against hers. A smile passed between them, unguarded, reckless, pure. They didn't notice the man at the corner table. They didn't notice the faint click of a camera lens. Days later, the photograph surfaced. At first, whispered in WhatsApp groups, shared in hushed tones, "Is this really her? The politician's daughter, with him?" But whispers have a way of growing. And by the next morning, it was everywhere. Front-page headlines. Blazing across television screens. Trending hashtags tearing through social media. Her flawless image, shattered in a single frame. The daughter of one of Nigeria's most powerful men, holding hands with the son of his fiercest rival. The reaction was swift and brutal. Allies of her father called it betrayal. Enemies called it hypocrisy. Commentators filled the airwaves, dissecting her private life like vultures circling a wounded animal. How could she? They demanded. Was it love or strategy? They speculated. Is this proof that her father is weak? They concluded. Her name trended online, not as a jewel of perfection, but as a scandal. Memes mocked her. Blogs twisted her story into rumors she could barely recognize. She wasn't a person anymore. She was a headline. She barely had time to breathe before she was summoned. The mansion's halls, usually echoing with silence, now thundered with her father's fury. He slammed the photograph onto the polished table, his voice a storm that shook the air. "You have disgraced this family," he roared. "Do you know what you've done? Do you know who he is? His blood is my enemy's blood. And now the whole nation sees you in his arms." Tears filled her eyes, but she refused to bow. "Baba, I love him." The words only fueled the fire. Her father's fist struck the table. "But love is for the weak. We do not love, we win. And you may have cost me everything." He wasn't wrong. Within days, political deals began to collapse. Allies pulled back. Investors hesitated. Opponents seized the moment, declaring her father's family corrupt, careless, incapable of control. Can a man who cannot control his own household control a nation? One rival sneered on live television. For the first time in years, her father looked vulnerable. The empire he had spent decades building shook at its very foundation. And she was at the center of the quake. If her cage had once been golden, now it was iron. Guards followed her every step, not to protect, but to contain. Her phone was seized. Her movements restricted. Her mother barely spoke to her, her eyes heavy with silent disappointment. But the cruelest blows came not from her family, but from the outside world. Strangers hurled insults at her online. Former friends distanced themselves. Even in public, whispers stung her like knives. There she is, shameful. Doesn't she know what she's done? She had always been the flawless daughter. Now she was the scandalous one. Through it all, he tried to reach her. The son of her father's rival. The boy who had made her feel alive. One night, they met in secret again, their worlds collapsing around them. His voice trembled with urgency. "Run away with me," he begged. "Leave all this behind. Forget the cameras, the politics, the chains. Let's disappear. We can start over, somewhere they'll never find us." Her heart ached at the thought. Freedom was what she had always wanted. Love was what she had always craved. And here it was in front of her, reaching out a hand. But behind her stood her family, her name, her father's empire. Could she abandon it all? Could she watch her father fall because of her? She lay awake at night, torn between two worlds. The girl she had always been, the jewel in her father's crown, and the woman she wanted to become, free, unshackled, in love. Her father's words echoed in her mind, "We do not love, we win." Her lover's plea echoed too, "Run away with me." And as the storm raged on, she realized there was no path that did not lead to ruin. It was no longer a matter of love or rebellion. It was survival. Because somewhere in the shadows, a greater enemy was rising. An enemy who saw not just a scandal, but an opportunity to bring down an empire. And the politician's daughter was about to learn that sometimes, the fire you ignite doesn't just burn you. It burns everything. Empires don't fall quietly. They don't crumble like sandcastles under the tide. They burn, loud, furious, consuming everything in their path. And for the politician's daughter, her love had struck the match. The photograph had lit the flame. But the fire was only beginning. This is the story of how her father's kingdom, built on power and fear, went up in flames, and how she was forced to choose between the empire that raised her and the love that set her free. The scandal had broken her father's image. But the fallout was far worse than she imagined. Business partners withdrew. Foreign investors pulled out of contracts. Political allies, once loyal, now kept their distance. Every handshake grew colder. Every meeting shorter. On television, opposition leaders hammered the story. If a man cannot lead his own family, how can he lead a nation? They asked. Each headline twisted the knife deeper, portraying her father not as the invincible giant he once was, but as a crumbling man whose own daughter had betrayed him. The empire shook, cracks spreading through its very foundation. Inside their mansion, the atmosphere turned poisonous. Her mother, usually composed and silent, now avoided her completely. Her brothers whispered in corridors, debating whether she had destroyed their future. Her father, once a towering presence, now looked older, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. Every glance she received was the same: blame, disgust, disappointment. "You've ruined us," her younger brother hissed one night, his voice low but sharp. "Do you know how many doors have closed? How many deals are dead because of you? You were supposed to be our pride. Now you're our shame." She said nothing, because deep down she feared he was right. Amid the ruins, the son of her father's rival remained her only light. He sought her out in secret, pulling her into quiet corners, away from the ever-watchful eyes. "Don't let them destroy you," he told her. "This empire, this cage, it was never yours. You don't owe them your life. Come with me. We can disappear. Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, they don't matter. We'll find somewhere new. Just you and me." His words were fire in her veins. But each time she considered it, the weight of her name pulled her back. How could she walk away while her father's world burned? But the empire's collapse wasn't just about politics. It was blood sport. Her father's enemies, long silenced under his shadow, saw their chance. Rival politicians launched investigations into his finances. Business adversaries filed lawsuits. Former allies leaked private conversations. Every day brought a new blow, a new headline, a new dagger in his back. And though none of it was truly her fault, the world painted her as the spark that set it off. The forbidden daughter, the reckless lover, the shame of the empire. The final straw came one humid evening. Her father, once untouchable, stormed into her room, veins bulging in his temples. "You will end this," he growled, throwing a stack of newspapers onto her bed. Each one bore her face. Each one screamed of disgrace. "You will denounce him. Publicly. On television. Tomorrow." Her chest tightened. "Baba, I can't." "You will," he barked. "Or you will no longer be my daughter." The words cut sharper than any blade. In his eyes, she was no longer his child, no longer blood, no longer family, unless she killed the only love she had ever known. That night, she met her lover one last time. The city stretched around them, loud and restless, but they stood in the shadows of a quiet bridge. "He's giving me no choice," she whispered, tears burning her eyes. "He wants me to denounce you, to destroy everything we have." His jaw tightened. His hands gripped hers. "Then don't. Run with me. Tonight. Right now." Her heart pounded. The choice stood before her, clear as day: freedom or family, love or legacy, herself or the empire. But before she could answer, headlights appeared. Black SUVs. Her father's men. The spell broke. They dragged her away, his voice echoing after her, "Fight for us. Don't let them win." The next morning, the cameras rolled. She sat under bright studio lights, her face pale, her hands trembling. Her father's allies had written her a statement. A carefully crafted script to erase her love, to restore her family's power. She read the words aloud. Denying him. Denouncing him. Calling the photographs lies, the relationship fabricated. But though her mouth spoke betrayal, her eyes told the truth. They glistened with pain, with longing, with love. And anyone who truly watched could see it. The performance was meant to save her father. Instead, it exposed the cracks even more. The empire did not survive. Her father's enemies were too many. His allies too fickle. His reputation too broken. The dynasty he had built with iron fists and golden walls crumbled in less than a year. Contracts dissolved. Elections lost. Power slipped away like sand through his fingers. The mansion that once gleamed with marble and gold grew quiet, its halls empty. Guards disappeared. Luxury cars sold. The fortress became a ruin. And she wandered its halls like a ghost, haunted by what she had done, by what she had lost, by the love she had betrayed on live television. But empires may fall, yet people remain. Months later, when the dust finally settled, she stood at a crossroads. Her father, now a shadow of himself, could barely look at her. Her family had retreated into silence, fractured beyond repair. And then, one evening, she saw him again. The boy she had once loved. The man she had betrayed. He stood before her, older now, hardened by the storm. His voice was steady. "I told you we could survive this. Do you believe me now?" Tears filled her eyes. "I destroyed you. I destroyed us." He shook his head. "No. They destroyed themselves. All you have to decide is whether you still want to be free." She looked at the ruins of the mansion behind her, the crumbling empire, the ghosts of a dynasty that had caged her all her life. Then she looked at him, the one person who had ever seen her as more than her father's daughter. And in that moment, she understood, empires burn, but love can rebuild. The question was no longer what she had lost. The question was, would she dare to choose herself? And that is the end of The Politician's Daughter. A story of power and betrayal, of love and rebellion, of how empires rise and fall, and how even in the ashes, one heart can find the strength to choose freedom. If you've followed this journey from the beginning, thank you. Don't forget to subscribe, because more stories of power, love, betrayal, and survival are coming your way. And remember, even the brightest cages can burn.